I really don't want to get started off yet.
Yeah. I just thought it was funny.
It is funny. It is funny. I think what's really interesting in England is that you have a prime minister that you can think whatever you want to think of, and the government changes every few years. Then you have a monarchy, which is a totally different story. Different story. It's not absolute anymore, so you don't have to really be afraid of the monarchy, which is nice. But gives a sense of enduring, authority without the masterpiece. Well, if you have a barrel, they can break the land down, I suppose. Potatoes.
Yeah.
I was going to turn the chair
I think they need to put our own entrance in this. What do you think? A little gate here? And in the front, what should it say? Something like, only official business. No, I was thinking of the sign you put.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm the silverware. I hope Chris will be coming.
I signed up for Lord of the Rings online.
Oh, really? Did you actually try playing it? Try playing it?
Yeah. I made it.
It's better than the other MMO.
My first character was a stereotypical hunter elf.
Sometimes stereotypes are.
The hunter class is based on Legolas.
So it's a Sylvan Elf.
I'm an elf.
What's that?
Can I help you at all?
I wish you could, but
Encourage you.
I'm the only one that knows the equipment, so.
Oh, well done, well done. Keep up with the good work.
Yes, we should do that.
Yes. Hey, Richard, be a good friend, would you bring my mocha? I can't quite reach it from here. I should have waited outside the.
Did you leave your teleport?
I did. Drat. Thank you, sir. Good bites. That's the one thing absent from Middle-earth that I just have a real issue with. No mention of coffee. He imports in tobacco.
Yeah.
But I mean, coffee
Potatoes,
coffee and tea. I know there's different things, but I mean they've been used for like centuries.
Right.
Tobacco was New World, so it was coffee.
Corn.
I know coffee. I like to say coffee is.
Oh yes, Arabic. Was that the first place it was developed? Arabic. Is that's Middle Ages? Or is it ancient?
Well, nobody was drinking.
Ah yes.
So you went
Good
around
old
and
days.
drunk.
I don't think they drank beer that was quite as high alcohol. Did they?
Oh, in some literature I've heard coffee was tried taking it.
As opposed to beer.
It discourages me.
Well, I always felt that after the first drink, there wasn't really a point to it because the first drink always tasted the best. So they had commission to say the drink was wrong. I like a good drink, but with those who felt like they had to sauce themselves. Like when I was in the Caribbean Navy, which is the regional child party in Oxford, where it lives, the Tolkien went, Simon Bell, and was trying to make my way down there once. There, and it's on the check out. Really small. To be honest, it's the same size as the Cafe Delicio when you believe it. With a beer garden on the back. That's the only difference.
Well, right.
We were learning about the pub. Better than one. The pub is the same size. The pub where Tolkien and Lewis met. I mean, not where they met. Where they get together with friends. Yeah. But they were.
No, I might just drink a lot of spring.
Yeah, they stopped making those now. They're quite unique. Are we on? Is this live?
Yes.
Your comments may be recorded and used against you.
So, but it's only right now running off of this for the moment.
Okay.
We're working on getting better audio.
So the monkey grinders comment was completely facetious. No monkeys have been drowned. Real or imaginary, or flying monkeys, may I add. I get that reference.
Flying monkeys could be a good.
Yes. Okay, homo. Behold the man.
B or A?
Hey, man.
When you deal with different languages, you don't know exactly the articles.
It's true.
Articles are in English.
Yes. Like articles of. True. Yeah. There is masculine, right? D is feminine.
Well, it also,
Yeah.
you have to memorize these endless lists. Unless you're going to it, then
Well, it's easy, isn't it? That's the great thing about your mother language.
you don't have to.
Tried to get here earlier, but I was not able to.
That's
I had a
okay.
sinking feeling when it first came in.
Sinking feeling.
Yeah.
It was Titanic.
Yeah, I'm afraid that I take people off.
We moved and we didn't tell you where we were going to be.
Yeah, that doesn't concern
You
me.
didn't get the memo.
Terribly sorry.
Sorry. Oh, yes. Forgot to mention that.
All right, so I have several different types of mics that we'll be using.
I'm just sitting here and focus.
Yeah, okay.
I have several types of Chris's.
I'll be out of your way in a few minutes.
I'm a little schizophrenic, you know.
So am I.
We've got. What about your other areas?
My brother died. My brother's wife senior citizen. The senior county. She had used in the previous life.
Oh, no. So a hacker had used her identity, or she just happened to have the same name as a hacker?
No, she had been.
Well, why? I think it'd be better to have them on your side, right?
Yeah, me too, especially
Having Iron Man on these pictures.
if you're in charge of the county.
Or the next one?
You would want to be a senior citizen. Like this guy.
So that's $140 mic. And I have a $40 one, Radio Shack,
Right, well, we can switch out.
and another one. So
Spoon and milk. Just rolls off the tongue. So, no, yeah, that's legal in Washington now. But they're not-
December
I think
6th.
it's
December 6th.
December 6th.
And that would
This
be in
becomes
our,
the Tolkien Club.
that would be in an apothecary.
No, it's, I have a little story to tell while we're wasting time.
Please do.
It is. It's second to wasting the mind.
Time. Like the but we don't have any conflict in mind.
Wasting minds. Oh, come off it. I'm sorry.
So which way would you like another?
So I'll just grab it off the
Get
story.
another
while
stool,
we
or-
finish.
Eventually.
This is kind of an interesting one. It goes downwards. Is this supposed to go downwards? I mean,
No.
It should be able to rotate. Oh, rotation.
Rotation.
It's revolutionary.
You should drink that complex.
I think it should not.
That would make it worse.
I think I would get Hawk very angry at me. And I'm not sure, but I think his
because
resemblance.
it's designed for a lapel.
Ah, that's right. I've come dressed in the robe. Let me just step up to my car and open up my trunk
But
wardrobe.
I'm not sure.
Here, I can just, I'll just kind of do it downish. Oh, no, wait. How about this? What about this?
Don't you have an inflatable hockey on that?
Okay.
Well, it's on your neck. Every time you move your neck, it's going to rustle.
I will move my neck.
Everybody's wearing sweaters. It's a beauty.
If
You be very careful with this. Expensive.
But you have to say lots of things like, how fresh now?
But he's got that space right there.
Oh, I can take it.
It's 18. Anyway, so my story is this. So in college, I went to this small university in Iowa, and we had this Tolkien club every year where we'd read through the Lord of the Rings in the full school year. And we'd advertise it as a club, and whoever wanted to would come, and then we would take parts and we would read, one through. We'd change the narrator every so many pages, but we would take a different part, and that day would be Gandalf for the year or whatever. And the one guy came along and he said when he told his girlfriend what he was going to, she thought he said Tolkien Club, like toking up. No, it's Tolkien. The writer.
Yeah, those are very popular. Actually,
Let me just put this down just a tiny, just to keep it.
All right.
Now you don't have to use your booming voice that you use in script. Yes. The South Farthing weed is tobacco. Let's just make that clear.
really?
Long bottom.
He said thanks.
Pipe, yes.
I didn't think anything
Not that kind of pipe weed.
Yeah.
Broadcasting live from Washington. On the left coast.
The weediest coast.
Although Oregon didn't pass theirs. Isn't that ironic?
That's incredibly ironic. You know what it is? I think Washington wants to write, even though people don't have the majority of
So there's a space between us and the other part.
I don't know. California, I would think. Is it? It's big now, isn't it?
Well, they've had their medicinal thing that's been
Right.
battled, but they have that.
Oregon has that.
I don't know what happened there.
Well, I just know that it'll be safer to hike around Northeast Washington now. They'll have to take out all the booby traps. They'll be disappointed.
Those were small.
But Yogi Ranger.
Tolkien would approve.
Which
Non-restricted weed.
Oh man. Now there is a debate topic.
There is a debate right there.
Right there.
I don't know. I never met them.
Sourman would definitely import it just to get his orcs all riled up.
Well, I definitely went to Gandalf.
No, that's maybe that's why he said when he was in Moria, "Oh, I don't remember coming this way. Smoked too much weed." We all know what it does to your memory.
Oh, you know, I had stress to be first.
Pretty soon we're going to have the dwarves on crack and the elves on meth and cooking up big pots of it and working for us. This is really going downhill fast. Save us, Hawk.
I'm working on it.
No, there's a reason my door better. Yes. Sorcerers. So.
Can I get you anything else?
Yes. Comes time. There comes time when you come to the bar.
You stare and
It stares back.
That's the disturbing part. When you get the seeing eyeball looking at those two eyes.
And you say, cut.
Is it a flaming?
No, it's not flaming eye. I've seen the eye. Oh, have you guys seen the Palantir? Have you seen that?
When
Testing 1 2. Testing 1 2. Testing 1 2. Testing 1 2. Testing 1 2 3 4 3 2. Testing 1 2. Testing 1 2 3. All right. One. Testing 1 2 3 4. And we go down until we get somewhere. Why is it? 2, 3. There we go. Now we're getting somewhere, I think. Testing. There we go.
He's got an the Witch King's got an icon.
Stand up has a switch.
Yeah.
Put that on the street normally, so
I like apple banana, but I also like 11 juice and second breakfast. And all sorts of things like that. And Mr. Hot is that he normally would. And we are going to do the pass the mic thing.
Did it? No, I couldn't even catch it.
We are going to do something else. I see. Yes.
It's good when you put it up against your ear.
Right, okay. So there's this.
I see an input. I see an input source light.
no, what? I'm gonna say, you got that export. See, he's got the right. He says,
No.
what's the stuff about the being good?
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm trying to listen and talk at the same time. Fly, you fool. Fly, you fool.
And you like,
Yes.
Yeah.
A and Z.
so, where was the bell? I didn't see the bell.
Where was the Balrog?
I didn't say there was a bell log.
No, I
Everybody wants a bell log. Oh, that's
The Balrog is tapped into the power of the jet engine.
Is that what it is?
What? What?
Didn't say anything worth speaking.
Balrog. The Silmarillion. We could just pass this one around.
get more data on the word. I was like, that was great.
Oh yeah.
That's all.
Well, the first part.
Right. Actually, there was no what. When they keep on with it. It's not like going on in
Well, it was kind of hard to see song. I don't need a way. So, here, imagination and dreaming.
Is that
Dream of what will be, and that's why you stay on. You know, let it be. First says this is what I'm going to do, and then
Yeah.
this is what I am doing.
is that similar to Make It So?
Yeah, I don't start that. But the
I don't think it's hard.
He's not? Well, he may not be a deity, but he is partially a deity.
oh boy. Everybody aboard.
The distance is futile.
There was, I mean, I think that was before.
I think
But hobbits did not think that they are deities, even with the raising of the Shire.
You know, it might go for
it's still like
that banging.
it's a louder. It's echo chambers. But I don't think the buckles that one. It is
it will pick up
Like,
my voice
when he's
a bit
talking,
better.
it's picking up him. I mean, you
Yeah.
hear you guys a little bit, but it's definitely picking up
Yeah.
clearly. Okay.
So we
So
can
I
just
think-
pass it around.
Yeah, we could before we it picks you up better than that is. I mean, I can.
We can pass it around. It doesn't
Yeah,
matter.
I don't know. Or we can just leave it with the person, yeah, talking. Like reading the letters, for example, would be really handy to have a mic.
Reading the letter.
But it is less background noise than this. And this is on.
Yeah.
Well, most of the time they're not driving. And this is the Radio Shack mic. For whatever reason, the most expensive mic is creating a big hum and stuff. But why don't we go ahead and get rolling here?
Okay.
Let me I'll do a quick introduction.
Writing.
All right. Well, it's less than perfect on the audio, but we're trying to improve it. And welcome to the November meeting of the.
Oh, I'm a lot louder than you are, apparently. Yeah. Tolkien Society, and I'm Hawk Robinson, founder of the society and Tolkien and such. And here we have
Chris Peterstein, Hobbit at large, or dwarf, whichever.
I'm Richard Baldwin. I guess I'd be an elf.
And I'm Brian Huseland, and yeah, glad to be here. Glad to have you with us. Stick with us for the next hour or hour and a half. Should be interesting.
so actually one maybe you just put down this.
Yep. Sure. Need to make sure I'm not too loud here. All right.
I apologize to folks. I am going to try getting the other stuff on.
Okay. Well, if you can hear me now. So our last meeting was in October, and at our Ea Tolkien Society, we read the notes from September and got into a discussion a little bit about the Hobbit, touch base on the 5 armies. Just a little quick question on who those were. But then we got into the letters, starting with letter 37, and Chris read us that letter, in which there's a mention of Beowulf. And so we just briefly talked about Tolkien's contributions to the promotion of Beowulf, and really recovering it as a key Old English piece of literature that would be studied widely. And really, as you know, because of Tolkien's essay, Beowulf, the Monsters and the Critics, it was his efforts that have made Beowulf widely known as it is, instead of it just being a mainly a kind of an expert or a scholar's story. Like, for example, some of the other literature from that time period, or even a little bit later on with Tolkien translated the Green Gawain and the Green Knight, the Pearl. And so those things are obviously not as well known by most people, but a lot of people have heard of Beowulf, and of course it's been made into a film and all that. So it goes back to Tolkien really being an advocate for Old English and for stories in Old English, and because of course he cared a lot about both of those subjects. And then also Tolkien mentioned the Lord of the Rings. He was writing it, and he was up to chapter 16, and so that's kind of how far he got. We discussed a little bit about the German edition. He mentioned that he had not been able to get it published yet, and so that would have to wait till after the war, obviously because of the aggression of the current administration and regime of the Nazi Party. And so the German edition of The Lord of the Rings did not get published until 1957. After that, then Richard read letter 38, I read letter 39, and Hawk read letter 40. Didn't really have a lot of notes from that time, but we did kind of just look through what was going on. Again, it was around the early 1940s, wartime period, a hard time for England, the United Kingdom, and so in the middle of this, there's authors, there's cooks, there's plumbers, there's ordinary people who are going through it all, and of course Tolkien's family was spread across Europe as well, and we'll get into that today with Michael being in the army and being away from home. We talked about our goblins and orcs, the same race, and then we talked about how now we're officially the Aya Tolkien Society. In terms of our meeting, it used to be Inland Empire, but Aya using Tolkien's the Elvish word there, which means may it be. So taking that from the creation epic Anu Lindale in the Silmarillion, when the creator made Arda. And so we talked about how this next meeting in November we would be reading letters 41, 42, and 43. Those are the notes for the October meeting of the Aya Tolkien Society. That's all I had. Should I keep that on or should I pass it on? Just leave it on. Okay. No. Turned off this one. Okay.
Shall we go ahead and move on to the reading assignment to start discussion, or did we want to follow up anything from last month's discussion? Or anybody on the list, the chat room listening, if you have any topics you wanted to make sure we address before we start doing the reading.
Last time. And it was my observation that Mount Doom, if Middle-earth, the areas of Middle-earth, Mordor, and Gondor are approximately in the Mediterranean area, then Mount Doom is actually a pretty close correlation to the volcano at
Santorini,
Santorini.
which is interesting because that ties in, of course, to all sorts of ancient.
Well, there's
European-
like a 3-continent plate boundary.
Right. But of course, he denied any kind of close linkage with that, didn't he?
Yeah.
Of course, but all good people copy, and so it's only logical that he copies and denies. But
So
who knows?
let's see. Let me have a quick look here on Facebook for our Tolkien.
Oh yeah, I forgot to. I think I posted.
You posted on there. Tolkien scholars. Let's see. No, okay. So I guess it'll just be if there's anybody in the chat. Well, here's something we could talk about. Maybe just kind of, if we could talk now about next month. I was just thinking that with the Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey, coming out on, I think, December 14th.
Is it unexpected or is it highly expected?
Very nice.
I don't know. I was kind of thinking it was an unexpected movie because I wasn't sure they were going to make it.
That's true. You could talk about that. But anyway, speaking of talking about it, I thought that it might be really appropriate for the summer reading for that to be kind of the main focus. Is the movie.
Second Saturday is the 8th December, so it's the Saturday. It's the weekend before the movie comes out. So either we kind of meet right before the movie to kind of, or right after it, actually hash it out. But then will that be a spoiler?
One would hope that 4,
I think so.
and then give it a month of digestion.
Yeah.
3 weeks of digest.
I think it'll take some time, and at least be able to see it 2 or 3 times.
Yes.
So, anyway, so I want to just suggest that we make that our main topic for our December meeting, and depending on what the next letters are, when we get there, we're going through letters 41, 42, 43 today, but let me just check here and see. 44, 45 are still letters to Michael Tolkien, and 46 is to a guy named W. Chapman. 47 is to Stanley Unwin. So I'm just not sure if there's a kind of a nice correlation there to see if I can maybe.
No, but when you go ahead, there's always the ability to make that aren't there.
This is,
Like any good cult, we can come up with our own correlation.
or I was thinking of election week, a month.
I thought you were going to leave that out.
Well, I was going to leave it out, but I'll just say this, that, you can always make outrageous claims about the opponent and to hope that the fact checkers don't spot you, but never mind, that's neither here nor there. I just feel like too many people are a bit too much like Ted Sandyman. Yes. Yes, it is not. We do not get to choose.
Should we take the president's ring to Mount Doom?
Oh, don't go there. That's been done already. There was a bumper sticker I saw back in 2005 or 6 that said Bush has the ring, or something like that.
Well, that explains why he disappeared.
No. Anyway, we will try to remain steadfastly apolitical here. I'm just looking ahead for everybody, for what sake it does, to look and see if the next few letters, if there's any tie to The Hobbit.
No, at the point we're in the letters, I think he's finished writing it.
He has, but he keeps mentioning, he sometimes mentions, I don't see, let's see here.
Hey, Hawk, do you have a hard copy of the letters?
Letters, yes.
Right here. Oh, because I don't.
Well, I was talking about, yeah.
Well, he's got a book.
Of course I do.
I don't think the next few letters say anything about. Oh, yes, it does. About 47. That's a few ahead. He does mention The Hobbit. Maybe we can. Yeah, that'd be nice if we could try to aim for that, because letter 47, it's to Stanley Unwin, and Unwin wrote on the 4th of December to say that Foyle's Bookshop in London were to issue The Hobbit under the imprint of their children's book club, and that this had enabled Allen and Unwin to reprint the book. This was all the more desirable as the previous stock of copies had been burnt during an air raid on London. How dare the Germans burn?
Oh, the Germans were into burning books.
That's right. That's right.
Germans were into burning books. You know, they had parties with that.
That's true. Well, anyway, that would be a nice connection if we could do that for next one. So,
I don't know
what
if
say
we get
you?
that many letters done.
Well, you know what we could do though is we could read the letters ahead of time and just skip ahead and ask if anybody wants to bring up any topics they can.
Sure.
Shall we do that?
Sure.
All right, Hawk, we made a decision.
No, it's not like we're going to read letter 43 in its entirety here.
No, we're not going to, but that's today. We're talking about December.
Yes.
It's the 8th of December. It's the week right before An Unexpected Journey comes out.
Okay.
And so maybe we thought that'd be nice to kind of focus on that and kind of the book and the film. And
Yeah, next month.
yeah. And then we would read, we try to kind of focus in on letter 47, which is just a few letters more.
Okay.
And that's the next time he mentions The Hobbit.
Sure.
So, good.
Are we going to go ahead and read?
Yep. Okay.
Who's gonna read?
I can read 41.
Okay.
From a letter to Michael Tolkien, 2nd January 1941. I have been clearing up.
You have to put it on.
Great. I have been been clearing up arrears of correspondence and have at last got as far as getting out my story again. But as soon as I really get started, term will be casting its shadow ahead, and I shall have to think of lectures and committees.
Yuck.
I don't know which one he did not like most, lectures or committees.
I think you like lectures more than committees.
I would imagine so.
Well, you find you're about an equal quote. Well, no, in the committees there's more of a quotient of obnoxious people
Right.
than there would be in a. Sometimes in the lectures, people actually think they don't know anything.
Yeah, that's true. So, what about the story he's referring to? Would that be the Fellowship of the Ring?
Maybe.
Or it's just the story?
Yeah, maybe. Probably.
The one he's been working on at this point.
It also shows how much Tolkien put store by writing letters, didn't he? He says, I have been clearing up arrears. So he was behind on correspondence.
Yeah. Well, back then,
Yeah, they didn't have email.
it would be the equivalent of clearing out your email inbox. Back then, you would have a stack of letters in your inbox, and you would, at some point, take a weekend and respond to all the ones that you needed to respond to.
Well, he probably threw out all the letters from the Sackville Bagginses.
Yeah. Not as much junk mail back then. You had a lot more meaningful writing and correspondence. You had to get back to people eventually.
Well, as a professor, his secretary would have thrown out the ones that, all the junk.
Right.
Yeah, right. So everything in your inbox would not be spam.
I wonder if a lot of his...
We all need secretaries, don't we?
Yes.
Technically, for him, it wouldn't be an inbox; it's a forwarding box.
And would he have gotten most of his mail through the college, or would it have been through at home? Yeah, right.
Wouldn't it be nice if all our spam filters had secretaries?
Well, any comments from the ether? Okay.
Is anybody logged on?
Well, the love, it's actually a,
Yeah.
Did we post people we were
oh yeah,
scheduling for
We
today?
did post for this day instead of the last week, but that's part of the
that's true. We'll be back on second Saturday next month. So.
yeah. So
Yeah.
so onward.
Okay. Letter 42.
I guess I'll read it. Written in English, though, so I might have some trouble since I speak American. To Michael, 42, to Michael Tolkien. After taking part with his gun battery in the defense of aerodomes during the Battle of Britain, Michael was injured in an accident with an army vehicle during night training and was sent to hospital in Worcester. This is one of the several letters his father sent to him there. 12th of January, 1941, 20 Northmord Road, Oxford. My dearest Mick, seems a long time since I wrote, and it has been a rather dreary and busy time, with a foul east wind blowing steadily day after day, and the weather varying from bone-piercing cold to gray, damp chill. I have had one amusement lately. Dr. Havard? Oh, yeah, no R. Took me and the Lewis brothers out to a pub at Appleton on a snowy, skiddy night last Tuesday. JB had given me a little pot of snuff as a birthday present. So I brought it out of my pocket and read out the ancient label. As supplied to their Majesties the King of Hanover and Belgium, etc., the Duke of Cumberland and the Duchess of Kent. Well, anyone have any, I said. Many horny hands?
It means rough. Rough, like farmer's hands.
Okay.
You see, you're right. See, it was not American.
Hands of yokels were thrust out. and several cap-lifting explosions followed.
Sneezing, I think.
Ah, you had better not tell JB what I did with a small portion of the precious Philibor and Tyler stuff. Major Lewis, unaware that Blackwell lives at Appleton and the locals were all ears, gave an amusing account of visiting Blackwell's shop with Hugo Dyson. When he came to the point at which the assistant returned to Hugo and said, "Sorry, sir, we have no second-hand copy, but we do have a new copy," and H replied, "Well, rub it on the floor and make it second-hand. It's all the same to me." There was loud applause. Apart from this brief interlude, life had been rather dull and much too full of committees and legislative business, which has kept me up late several nights. Air raid warnings are frequent here, but so far remain just warnings. I fancy things will blow up earlier this year than last, weather permitting, and that we shall have a pretty hectic time in every corner of this island. It is also plain that our dear old friends, the USSR, are up to some mischief. There's a note, 5 subnote. Makes me curious to want to see what that's about.
We'll have to do that at the end, yeah.
It is a pretty close race with time. I don't suppose mere citizens really have any knowledge of what is going on. But plain reasoning seems to show that Hitler must attack this country direct and very heavily soon, before the summer. Meanwhile, the daily worker is cried in the streets unmolested. Okay. We shall have some lively times after the war, even if we win it as far as Germany is concerned. God bless you, my dear son. I pray for you constantly. Remember me. If you want anything especially, very much love from your father.
I just love the relationship that Tolkien has with his sons. It is. He's not a perfect man, but he did care about his family. I think these letters show his relationship with Michael is a pretty good one. What a terrible time for you think about your family being spread apart in Europe. Absolutely. I guess he's in hospital. Michael's in hospital in Worcester, so.
A copy of the book, especially?
Yeah, there you go. You want to look at the footnotes there?
I think I found them.
Okay, so the first one is about Dr. Havard. Who is he?
Tolkien's guardian. Father Francis Morgan disapproved of his clandestine love affair with Edith Bratt.
No, I think that's...
Oh, that's 43. My bad. I.R.E. Havard, a general medical practitioner.
Okay.
His doctor?
Yeah, well, apparently, yeah. Yes, he knew his doctor pretty well. And then the Lewis brothers.
2 is C.S. Lewis.
Yep.
And his brother, Major W.H. Lewis.
Yes. Warning. Yeah.
3, Sir Basil Blackwell, bookseller and publisher.
Okay, so they were talking about this publisher. That makes sense why he wanted a secondhand copy, because he was probably a dealer in secondhand books. And so that's why there was a joke. So.
For HVD, Hugo Dyson, friend of Lewis and Tolkien, at this time a lecturer at Reading University. Did he do a lot of reading there?
Yeah.
5. On 10th of January 1941, Germany signed a new treaty with Russia as an indication of the mutual understanding that supposedly existed between them at this time.
So in other words, the fact that the USSR had made an agreement with Germany, Tolkien was referring to that.
No, they formalized their understanding. I see.
Which, of course, Germany went back on, didn't it?
No. This is... oh, you're right. My bad. I thought it was between Britain. Yeah, at this time, Russia was an ally of Germany.
Yeah.
But Russia had been an ally of Britain in World War I.
Aha. Well, yeah, but that was before the revolution, wasn't it? Everything got dropped after the revolution.
True. The Bolshevik Revolution happened after the First War.
Yeah.
So this is a
Well,
communist
it actually
government now.
happened during the First War.
See, the communists were not popular in Germany at all.
No.
The Nazis hated the communists.
Actually, footnote 6 relevant.
So did we.
The daily newspaper of the British Communist Party.
Okay, so the Daily Worker is a newspaper of the British Communist Party,
Yeah.
and he's saying that is being,
Randied about.
yeah,
Unmolested.
right. So basically, they're free to go around, encouraging communism
Meanwhile,
But the unwritten part of that would be that other news is being molested.
ah,
It
it's being censored.
is right here, yes.
Right, right.
So
That's interesting.
kind of
Well, yeah, Britain has never been unashamed to censor the news in the interest of public serenity. Right. Well, conformity is valued highly there. Isn't it true to all of Europe? Somewhat, although some British people don't see themselves as part of Europe. They see Europe as a continent. They kind of have their own independent attitude. Some people there would definitely be more inclined towards the
Right.
pan-European
But they
attitudes.
they consider Americans extreme.
Sure, most of the time
We are. We deserve
We're
that.
extremely extreme.
Yeah. We deserve that
A
label.
radical. Well, I think part of it's because we're willing to not toe the line and to kind of say, hey, why is this happening? And kind of raise lots of questions. But over there, that's considered very impolite.
This is the days before Walter Murrow.
Yeah. Who's Walter Murrow?
Ed Murrow and Walter Cronkite.
Well, yeah, Walter Cronkite was post-war.
Yes. But this is before all those days where
So, what do you mean by that?
yeah, investigative media, a media that was independent of the government, really was formed post-war in the U.S. Before that time, in the 20s all the way through the war, the media was really censored and was the lapdog of the government, country. Even in our country.
Yeah. Okay, good point. Anything else to tie into this letter? That's all the footnote. Okay, thanks, Richard. You want a hard copy for 43? I think we'll read just maybe parts of 43. Yeah, go ahead. So, letter 43 is from a letter that J.R.R. Tolkien wrote to his son Michael. I think he included it maybe, well, no, I guess this was a brand new letter. And this was from 1941, early March. So it's about 2 months after the last letter. So this is letter 43. And so it says it's on the subject of marriage and relations between the genders. And it's in the context of a father and a son. So it's, it's not like he's making a lecture on this. He never intended probably for this to be read publicly. I would hope not. But the context I think that's helpful to know is that 43. I think what's helpful is that his son has probably asked him advice, saying, I'm thinking about, what do you think about, maybe there was a girl he knew, and is he just thinking about the whole issue of how I relate to them?
A fine British nurse.
Possibly, yeah.
Yes.
Was it?
Comment from Artemir.
I have no idea, but
Comment from Artemir.
Sure, just a second.
No,
oh.
You don't have to read over. Just point towards me. Artemir says, I think Harvard was Tolkien's doctor at some point, but also a member of the Inklings? Question mark. Don't know.
Good question, Artemir.
What's the Inklings?
Inklings? Well, that was the group that Tolkien and C.S. Lewis thought they would get together and read poetry and their writings to each other and share with each other and work on each other's work. It started before then, right? But that's kind of the culmination.
Oh, the main core, but it always others would come and go. Yeah, Charles Williams was another one, and they met in the Eagle and Child pub in North Oxford, near the university where they taught. And yes, according to Wikipedia, which is user.
Oh yeah, that's 100% accurate.
Now hold on, Wikipedia gets a lot of grief, but if the article is a good starting point, and if it's like peer review of anything,
if people who know their stuff are contributing, they're pretty good at kind of
enough eyeballs on it.
getting rid of some of this stuff. Yeah, right. But here's what's interesting. It says that so Harvard was part of the Inklings apparently.
My only problem with the wiki is it's a consensus reality.
Well, right, and that's where it's only as good as the accuracy of those that contribute, which is a strong, actually a strong reason for people to be involved. I actually belong to Wikipedia, but I don't contribute as much as I should.
I focus mostly on the Tolkien reading
Right.
portion. That's the area I know well.
Right, exactly, which is what everybody should do. They should focus not on their hobby horse, but on what they know a lot about. But anyway, here's what it says. So unless somebody finds facts which are incorrect, but it just says that Dr. Havard was the physician of C.S. Lewis and his wife Joy Gresham. It was apparently Artemir. It was the doctor that the Lewis family knew, and through the Lewises came to the Inklings, and that would explain why Havard, the Lewises, both of the brothers, and Tolkien would have gone to the pub in Appleton. And so anyway, he shared literary interests with that group, and that's why he was involved. Havard was sometimes referred to by the Inklings as the useless quack, mainly because Warren Lewis once called him so upon being irritated by his tardiness, and his brother Jack thought it quite amusing at the time and caused the nickname to continue. The abbreviation UQ was therefore a common reference to Havard. Hugo Dyson once called him Humphrey when he could not remember his name. After that, Havard was quite frequently known as Dr. Humphrey Havard, to the extent that when Douglas Gresham, C.S. Lewis's stepson, came to know him years later and became his patient, it was some time before he discovered Robert Havard's actual name was not really Humphrey. So there you go.
Wow.
Okay. Well, anyway, on to the letter. I'm not going to read the whole thing because obviously it's a very long letter. I would encourage all those who are interested in reading it in its entirety. You can do so on their notes.
How many pages is that?
Do you think we have time?
Maybe we take turns.
Okay.
5 minutes turns.
Yeah, sure.
Excellent.
Okay. Well, this is I'll do my turn and I'll pass it on to you. A man's dealings with this is Tolkien writing to his son about the subject. His son has asked him about women. A man's dealings with women can be purely physical. They cannot really, of course, but I mean, he can refuse to take other things into account to the great damage of his soul and body and theirs. Or he can be friendly, or he can be a lover, engaging in blending all his affections and powers of mind and body in a complex emotion, powerfully colored and energized by sex. This is a fallen world. The dislocation of sex instinct is one of the chief symptoms of the fall. The world has been going to the bad all down the ages. The various social forms shift, and each new mode has its special dangers. The quote, hard spirit of concupiscence, or lust, has walked down every street and sat leering in every house since Adam fell. We will leave aside the immoral results. These you desire not to be dragged into. To renunciation you have no call. Friendship, then? In this fallen world, the friendship that should be possible between all human beings is virtually impossible between man and woman. The devil is endlessly ingenious, and sex is his favorite subject. He is as good at every bit as catching you through generous romantic or tender motives as through baser or more animal ones. This friendship has often been tried. One side or the other nearly always fails. Later in life, when sex cools down, it may be possible. It may happen between saints. To ordinary folk, it can only rarely occur. Few minds that have really a primarily mental and spiritual affinity may by accident reside in a male and a female body, and yet may desire and achieve a friendship quite independent of sex. But no one can count on it. The other partner will let him or her down almost certainly by falling in love. But a young man does not really, as a rule, want friendship, even if he says he does. There are plenty of young men, as a rule. He wants love, innocent and yet irresponsible perhaps. Alas, alas, that ever love was sin, as Chaucer says. Then if he is a Christian and is aware that there is such a thing as sin, he wants to know what to do about it. So maybe that's a good stopping spot, our first paragraph there. Did everybody get the reference to renunciation? No. So that what he means is, and of course he's writing as a Roman Catholic Christian, Tolkien's saying, well, really you have three alternatives, Michael. You can either
choose to become a monk, I mean, if you have holy order, you can take holy orders and become a monk and basically be celibate your whole life. But he says, you don't have a desire to do that, and that's fine. So if you're not going to do that, then you can either try to be a friend, but that's very difficult sometimes without romance getting in the middle of it and spoiling what someone would consider
You
good
seem to
friendship.
indicate that if friendship would always fail as an option
Mm.
because somebody had messed it up.
Well, somebody would want it inevitably to go into romance.
It's definitely a hotly debated topic.
It is, but let's talk about it.
What's that? Yeah,
Well, there's probably a lot of relationships that would bear out some of what he's saying. So, any comments from the Peanut Gallery?
Anybody else have comments there? And the stream will continue reading.
I guess technically we're not the peanut gallery.
Ardemir says letter 43 goes quite in depth. If I remember correctly, it has been used as reference in some Tolkien lore discussions.
Well, I think it definitely shows, I mean, he's trying to explain to his son relationships, which are always a phony topic, really.
Does this inform his?
Michael?
Does this inform Aragorn and Arwen's relationship?
Oh, for sure.
Well, that was a romantic relationship.
I think he deals with that later in the letter.
Is that not part of the content of this?
I think it's the context.
Yes.
I think when he talks about idealized love in the next paragraph, I mean, that's really where he's going.
Onward.
Well, before we go on, can I ask one thing?
Yes.
And that's just simply this.
They use it. It says they use it in Tolkien lore discussions in order to understand some of the relationships occurring in Tolkien's writing.
Right, because obviously that influences his writing.
Yeah, his whole viewpoint on that. Yeah.
I have a lot of respect for Tolkien. I mean, one of the people in history that I would definitely respect quite highly. I do think that while he's definitely trying to give his son some good advice here, my personal view is that the one influence on him is that his view of relationships is colored by a very medieval Catholic view of physical things. So while I think he's saying marriage is a good thing, I think he would be pretty much in line with a lot of other people in the past who would say, at least the official party line is, or it has been, procreation, not pleasure. In other words, somehow pleasure is inherently bad. And I think, and I might be misunderstanding Tolkien here, because I think he later talks about how sex can be turned towards a good thing. But I just wonder if in his own mind, if he's quite sure about that, because I think it's kind of identified as an animal desire rather than could be a good thing.
He's definitely kind of towing the line.
Yeah.
He's saying that it's not quite
Not evil.
It's not the party line.
Yeah.
But it has an issue.
Yeah.
And at the same time, we talk in, I guess, Christian circles. There's this new pastor who's about to retire, who has this concept of Christian hedonism, of very pleasurable Christianity, which is the opposite view of what Tolkien is writing here. And I'm not quite so sure that's the answer either.
Right. But I think what you're referring to is a good point, because I think Christians throughout the ages have always struggled with this, because we want to deal with the fact that there really is corruption, there is immorality, there is a lot of brokenness and heartache in the relationships. We know that's true in human experience. At the same time,
yeah,
right, the asceticism.
Yeah.
But the opposite, and I think that at the same time, I mean, when you look at the Bible, I mean, one book of the Bible, the Song of Solomon, is all about sex and romance.
Right, but that's supposed to be within the context of marriage.
Well, it is, and I totally agree with that. But what I'm saying is that overall, it's actually quite a positive view, saying this is a good thing, but it's not meant to be used primarily as a selfish thing. It's meant to be given and shared.
What? the Roman Catholics ignored the Song of Solomon?
I think they, well, you know why? Because Aquinas allegorized it. I mean, all the church fathers saw it as an allegory.
Yeah.
And I think the plain reading of it is a husband and a wife who really find each other extremely attractive. But that's my point.
Onward.
Yes, please.
Okay, continuing with letter 43. There is in our Western culture the romantic chivalric tradition still strong, though as a product of Christendom, but by no means the same as Christian ethics. The times are inimitable. It idealizes love, and as far as it goes, can be very good, since it takes in far more than physical pleasure, and enjoins, if not purity, at least fidelity, and so self-denial, quote-unquote service, courtesy, honor, and courage. Its weakness is, of course, that it began as an artificial courtly game, a way of enjoying love for its own sake, without reference to, and indeed contrary to, matrimony. Its center was not God, but imaginary deities, love, and the lady. It still tends to make the lady a kind of guiding star or divinity, of the old-fashioned his divinity equals the woman he loves, the object or reason of noble conduct. This is, of course, false and at best make-believe. The woman is another fallen human being with a soul in perils, but combined and harmonized with religion. As long as it was producing much of that beautiful devotion to Our Lady that has been God's way of refining so much our gross manly natures and emotions, and also of warming and coloring our hard, bitter religion, it can be very noble. Then it produces what I suppose is still felt among those who retain even vestigiary Christianity, to be the highest ideal of love between man and woman. Yet I still think it has its dangers. It is not wholly true, and it is not perfectly theocentric. It takes, or at any rate has in the past taken, the young man's eye off women as they are, as companions in shipwreck, not guiding stars.
I like that.
One result is for observation of the actual to make the young man turn cynical, to forget their desires, needs, and temptations. It inculcates exaggerated notions of, quote, true love as a fire from without, a permanent exaltation unrelated to age, childbearing, and plain life, and unrelated to will and purpose. One result of that is to make young folk look for a love that will keep them always nice and warm in a cold world without any effort of theirs. And the incurably romantic go on looking even in the squalor of divorce courts.
Wow.
They should get a.
Interesting comment. Yes. Right.
Actually,
How many love songs, thousands and thousands of love songs have been based on the whole topic of people, the man worshiping the woman?
right, but that way of thinking requires that you turn the woman into an object instead of a human.
And very true. And the object is unrequited. Unrequited love. Oh, big topic.
Sorry, I forget I have to share the mic.
Well, elaborate on that, Chris.
Well, I had this high school teacher in the humanities that had a big thing about unrequited love and the medieval period of time where women had been idealized, both of those words, to the point where the return of love was not really there. And so you were always, they were
objectified.
As long as you love her.
That's right. And so, what is it? Old-fashioned, his divinity equals the woman he loves, the object or reason for noble conduct.
Well, that's substituting. If you're a Christian, that's substituting God for another deity.
A human being for God. Well, and I think he's making a really good point, and that is too much of a burden for anyone. I mean, you try to worship this person, they're going to let you down. You're going to get upset at them or whatever. But
Putting anybody on a pedestal.
But it's interesting how he points out the.
But Eowyn was on a pedestal.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, but she was an elf.
I think. Well, no, Eowyn was one of the Rohirrim.
But she turned human.
We're talking about Arwen now, not Eowyn.
He's right.
You're talking about
Yeah,
Arwen.
Arwen.
I think Arwen is a really good point. So go on with
She actually puts Aragorn on a pedestal. A little bit of reverse there.
It's, but he needs it, you see, if he is going to be the king.
He does. He's got the Middle Earth on his shoulders, like Atlas.
Yeah.
And see, that is all through Middle Earth lore right there.
Yeah.
That the woman, the divine woman, the Lady of the Lake comes out of.
Do you really think she's shipping that much water?
So you're saying a watery tart with a big knife makes you the legitimate king of England?
Loves a scimitar. Some moistened.
But that's the Monty Python commentary
Yes.
that
Yes.
is exactly this topic.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and also the whole divine rights kinship and stuff.
Yeah.
But her family was keeping that broken sword of his father around for quite a while.
Right. Well, this is, maybe Tolkien's reminding us of our heritage here. This is, for better or worse, kind of the background in which people were thinking. It was kind of the follow-on from the ancient world in which women were seen as more property.
It might not be Christian, but certainly the Celtic lore, even beyond and before the medieval times.
Right.
Lots of watery tarts.
Yes. It was in that also.
Yeah. Right.
King Arthur, Knights of the Round
Oh.
Table, and even before that,
Yeah.
there's a lot of that type and style of women being divinity, granting that,
Right.
man's the inferior one here.
Right.
Old style liberalism.
Yeah.
Or the old style what word?
Traditional?
No.
Feminism?
Yes, old style feminism.
Actually, feminism is a great word to bring up in this because of the three waves of feminism. The first
Well,
one.
actually, before we do that, I want to read
go
this
ahead.
paragraph because
Yeah.
it starts
Yeah.
out with women.
Yes. Carry on. Any comments from our
No,
good?
my mic is not clear.
Okay. We do enjoy all of
Yeah,
our.
we would really appreciate everybody else's
Yeah.
comments.
You're not the peanut gallery. We are. So we love it when you chime in.
All right, continuing. Women really have not much part in all this. Though they may use the language of romantic love since it is so entwined in all our idioms, the sexual impulse makes women, naturally when unspoiled, more unselfish, very sympathetic and understanding, or especially desirous of being so or seeming so, and very ready to enter into all the interests, as far as they can, from ties to religion, of the young men they are attracted to. No intent necessarily to deceive, sheer instinct, the servient helpmeet instinct generously warmed by a desire in young blood. Under this impulse, they can in fact often achieve very remarkable insight and understanding, even of things otherwise outside their natural range. For it is their gift to be receptive, stimulated, fertilized, and many other matters than the physical by the male. Every teacher knows that. How quickly an intelligent woman can be taught to grasp his ideas, see his point, and how, with rare exceptions, they can go no further when they leave his hand full of boy, or when they cease to take a personal interest in him. For this is their natural avenue to love. Before the young woman knows where she is, and while the romantic young man, when he exists, is still sighing, she may actually, quote, fall in love. Which for her, an unspoiled, natural young woman, means that she wants to become the mother of the young man's children, even if that desire is by no means clear to her or explicit. And then things are going to happen. And they may be very painful and harmful if things go wrong.
That's true.
Particularly if the young man only wanted a temporary guiding star of divinity until he hitches his wagon to a brighter one, and was merely enjoying the flattery of sympathy nicely seasoned with a place of sex. All quite innocent, of course, and worlds away from, quote, seduction. Oh, boy.
Now we have to keep in mind that Tolkien
His time period.
was living in an era when
Yes.
women were not as educated as they are now.
Yes.
And this is before the feminism of the 1960s and 70s. The only wave of feminism that had occurred had been the first wave, which was for women's rights and voting and representation, things like that, which was
And teetotaling.
early
Such.
1900s. Yeah.
Well, something I was thinking about was that a lot of the deities in myth are female, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the entities involved were female. They could have just had the female form so that the males involved wouldn't spend any time thinking about what was going on.
Could be. So was Tolkien a chauvinist?
He was a Catholic and a product of his time. I don't think it was any.
He would socially, he was raised to be a chauvinist. He may have been more open-minded than others of his peers, but certainly, yeah. I mean, it clearly comes across in this, and it comes across throughout his other. But in his writings, he does keep them equality, but at the same time, he does do some of the little idle. I mean, with his wife, certainly, and Baron and Luthien. There is some of that putting them up higher than the normal expectations.
Which is really ironic to me because it both keeps women lower than they should be and yet puts them higher than they ought to be.
So are you trying to imply I should put away the pedestal I've been keeping in the backyard?
So a chauvinist gentleman, is that a contradiction in terms?
No. I think there is such a thing as a non-chauvinist gentleman.
That's commonly referred to as a chauvinist pig.
Yeah. Well, I don't think, I mean, this is maybe a little broad-ranging. I don't think chivalry is dead or should be dead in its essence of what, like, courtesy. I think there's some good things that came out.
Right. Well, I
think there is an awful lot of patronizing that back in Tolkien's day that men would, and I think women were really frustrated by that because probably it would be kind of seen as, oh, you're just dumb. You can't really understand these things.
At the same time, I think the feminine movement of the 60s has done a pendulum swing to a far extreme that isn't warranted.
No, you're right. In fact, the second wave feminism in the 60s and 70s, in some ways, was about a lot of erasing of distinctions, but what a lot of second wave feminists never dreamed of, I think, in all the radical bra-burning days, was the extent to which third wave feminism has gone. For example, with pornography. Second wave feminism in the 60s and 70s said pornography, like we talked about earlier, turns women into objects. This is wrong. You're exploiting this, and it's treating them as things rather than persons with a mind. You're just seeing it as a body. But actually, third wave feminism which is current.
If you've got it,
Flaunt it, and that's considered freedom. That's considered good, and I think Richard's comment is a warranted one. I think while we would decry the kind of the patronizing and the looking down on women or treating them as a different than a normal human being, as in Tolkien's day, perhaps. I think it has swung quite the other way.
Well, the current thinking of feminism is trying to set up a female superiority as a culture, I think. And so instead of wanting to treat men as equals, they want to treat them as inferiors and slaves.
Sure.
But actually, there's kind of an Amazon thing going on there.
Men would normally do that if they were allowed to do that.
Yeah.
Well, just because I'm inclined to murder doesn't mean that I should indulge my habits.
Well, I think let's keep it linked to Tolkien's letter here.
Yeah.
So before we're going to move on to the next paragraph here, if there's any ladies, any women who are listening in, we'd love to hear your comments, as we unfortunately don't have any of you with us. More's the pity. We'd love to have you
I'm
join.
pretty sure Morrodim is listening. Morrodim's pretty regular. I believe that's
Great. I just think respect is a huge focus here. What does it mean for men and women to respect each other? And that avoids maybe both extremes.
Yeah, the old age attitude, I think, goes too far, but so is the new attitude.
he seems to leave room for there to be some equality. He says that men and women are both capable of great good and great evil. He says if you add what do you say? If you idolize a woman, you're not doing her favors because she's just another fallen human being with her own flaws, and so it's a relationship there.
Yeah, you're setting standards for her to follow that she can't meet, and the reverse is true.
Well, should we go on to the next one? Yeah. Do we want Chris to have a turn now?
Do you want to read, Chris?
Sure.
Okay.
You may meet in life, as in literature, women who are flighty, or even plain wanton. And I don't refer to mere flirtatiousness, the sparring practice for the real combat, but to women who are too silly to take love seriously, or to actually or are actually so depraved as to enjoy conquests, or even enjoy the giving of pain. But these are abnormalities, even though false teaching, bad upbringing, and corrupt fashions may encourage them. Much though modern conditions have changed feminine circumstances and the detail of what is considered propriety, they have not changed natural circumstances. Natural instinct.
Yeah.
A man has a life work, a career, and male friends, which was true at that time, not now, all of which could and do, where he has any guts, survive the shipwreck of love. A young woman, even one economically independent, as they say now, it usually means economic subservience to male commercial employers instead of to a father or a family. Begins to think of the bottom drawer and dream of a home almost at once. If she really falls in love, the shipwreck may really end on the rocks. Anyway, women are in general much less romantic and more practical. Don't be misled by the fact that they are more sentimental in words, freer with darling and all that. They do not want a guiding star. They may idealize a plain young man into a hero, but they don't really need any such glamour either to fall in love or to remain in it. If they have any delusion, it is that they can reform men. There is a key sentence right there. If they have any delusion, it is that they can reform men. They will take a rotter open-eyed. They will take a rotter
That's
open-eyed.
a nickname for a man.
Yeah, and even when the delusion of reforming him fails, go on loving him. They are, of course, much more realistic about the sexual relation and less perverted by bad contemporary fashions. They do not, as a rule, talk body, not because they are purer than men. They are not, but because they don't find it funny. I have known those who pretend to, but it is a pretense. It may be intriguing, interesting, absorbing, even a great deal too absorbing to them, but it's just plumb natural, a serious, obvious interest. Where is the joke? So,
well, he's referred to the third wave of feminism, even though it hadn't happened yet.
Speaking of body,
yeah.
So in the Geek and Sundry chat room, which we don't hear from as often, Dan L. says, would be great if such a well-accomplished writer was just like, quote, girls have boobs, I like boobs, end quote. Speaking of bodies. Yeah, the Geek and Sundry room can be a little more colorful than the Tolkien.
Right.
Colorful.
The One Ring chat room.
I think it's interesting that he says women who are too silly to or so depraved as to enjoy conquests or even enjoy the giving of pain. He says those are abnormalities, and I think he's right. But what's sad is actually that's become more and more socially acceptable. You know, I mean, and that's the sad thing, is that in the desiring to be equal to men, I think it's sometimes the modern feminism has become an imitation in the bad way. You know, like stooping to as low as we men have gone.
On another note, I have to agree that some women look at men as kind of a remodeling project.
There's a lot to remodel.
Well, for one thing, they think it can stick.
Right.
And for another, I think it's doable. And then it just gets them in all sorts of trouble.
My wife agreed with that line, by the way.
Yeah,
If they have any delusion, it's that they can reform men.
the Red Green Show.
Yes.
I'm a man, and I can change if I have to, I guess.
The other thing is when he's the last part of that paragraph, I think that the caution that he's referring to there is more of a product of the age. There's less consequence now than there was back then. We have birth control and we have abortion as options, and they didn't really have them back then. You were seriously ostracized for having an abortion. Where you're not. That's not true nowadays.
The next paragraph right there.
Oh, it is.
Oops. Sorry, got ahead of myself. No worries.
You want to read that one, Richard?
I guess if I have to.
You ready there, Hawk?
Yeah, keep going. Google keeps auto-changing the mic, so I back it off from distortion, and it keeps cranking it up to distorted levels.
Should I be holding it down?
No, you're fine. It's not you. In fact, if you hold it too far away, then I can't hear it. It's just infuriating. No matter what I do, Google Plus screws up audio.
Yeah.
Really frustrating.
It's an executive decision.
I need to find a different product and broadcast
Find a different product then. Maybe Vimeo or Vimeo Plus.
To the next paragraph, then. We have, of course, still to be more careful in sexual relations, for all the contraceptive mistakes are damaging physically and socially, and matrimonially. But they are instinctively, when uncorrupt, monogamous. Men are not. No good pretending. Men just ain't. Not by their animal nature. Monogamy, although it's long been fundamental to our inherited ideas, is for us men a piece of revealed ethic, according to faith and not to the flesh. Each of us could healthily budget beget. Sorry. Budget might apply too. In our 30 years of full manhood, a few hundred children, and enjoy the process. Brigham Young, I believe, was a healthy and happy man.
Oh,
Did
boy.
he? I don't know. What was his count?
Finish the sentence. Finish the paragraph.
It is a fallen world, and there is no consequence between our bodies, minds, and souls.
I think it's just kind of drawing out the logic here.
And that's interesting because Arthur Conan Doyle had interesting viewpoints about the Mormons and everything. The first chapter of Sherlock Holmes, in the memorial edition of Sherlock Holmes that I have a hard time, starts on the Salt Flats of Salt Lake.
No.
And it's slamming the Mormons. And they were about a period of isolationism and such. And it's very interesting, the viewpoints that were going on around that time.
Yeah.
Well, I kind of think polygamy is a way to justify adultery without feeling guilty.
Well, but anyway, it's interesting that I didn't know Tolkien even mentioned.
I know, isn't it? I mean, we've never in a million years connect Tolkien and Brigham Young there.
Surprised by his.
Well, he probably knew him.
Well,
I don't think he knew him personally.
I don't think he. No, I don't think he was necessarily approving here. I mean, he's simply saying on a biological level, men do not naturally of their own.
Holding Brigham Young up as an example of the biological.
Well, okay. But what I was pointing out was simply the fact that men may be.
Relationships like that.
Well, I don't think he was talking about relationships necessarily, just fathering.
But in order to have all that happen.
I know the ancient world, though. Look at King Solomon.
If you don't, it's a lot easier if you just don't care.
Well, I think what he's trying to get to here is that women will naturally lean towards monogamy unless influenced by, society. But I think there's a truth to this where he says that women are practical. They'll be like,
Yeah,
hey, let's make a home. Let's go, let's start a family. Whereas men are like, oh, let's just stay in bed.
They're generally stuck with the product of the relationship.
Well, this is true, but they may welcome
I
that.
really wish we had some female members
I know.
participate in this discussion. That would
I did read this with my wife and asked her her
yeah, what did
opinions.
she say?
Well, she said that she brought up actually Percy Shelley and Mary Shelley, who wrote Frankenstein,
Right.
and she said that was an example where romanticism in the 19th century and this idea of if it feels good, do it, and kind of let's be free and enjoy the passions because that's part of who we are, and let's not be too logical and not too rigid. She said it really shows how the differences between men and women. She said because Percy and Mary both subscribed to this ideal, and they were kind of very radical for their time period, and we were living in Switzerland or whatever, and Percy had like multiple relationships with all sorts of women and mistresses, and they had agreed ahead of time this was okay, but she ended up going the relationship ended up being destroyed through it, and she was, I think, from what you read about, heartbroken over how it all went. And I think he never really it wasn't ever a big issue for him. Whereas even a woman who said, hey, you know what, I'm willing to try something new, and who cares if people say this is scandalous, but in the end, when it came down to it, even if you're kind of cutting edge, she wants to say, let's share a life together. And he's like, actually, commitment's not my middle name. And
I don't think it was his first name.
no, his middle name was Bish. But maybe it should have been something similar. Anyway, so she brought that up and said she thinks that he may be onto something in that women, no matter how liberal leaning, will tend to still favor static. Let's make a home, whereas men are out hunting and gathering.
Which is why, as his comment is about the issue of the employer, one of the reasons why wages are different between men and women in this society. It's not because of this issue of being paid unfairly, it's because they have different values.
I'm actually starting to come to a conclusion that employment is pretty much akin to slavery in the ancient world. We're just getting money in exchange.
No, well, not in my case, no.
I'm not saying in every case, but I mean for like a minimum wage job.
More the people who work for me.
I think what it is, I will say one thing, Richard, that maybe goes along with you. I have a question for you. I mean, do you feel like there's a lot of inequality? Is that what you're getting at?
There is. Well, for one thing, they have a lot of control over their employees. They're allowed to say when you have to wake up, what you have to wear, how you have to keep. How they can even get into your personal hygiene. They can get into your personal relationships. It just seems more intrusive than people are realizing to me. Of course, I'm unemployed, so that has a lot to do with it.
Shall we go on to the next paragraph? Unless there's any other comments here?
Sorry, disengaged football.
No, that's okay. Okay.
Whose turn is it?
It's mine. However, the essence of a fallen world is that the best cannot be attained by free enjoyment or by what is called self-realization, usually a nice name for self-indulgence, wholly inimical to the realization of other selves, but by denial, by suffering. So that if I can take out the parenthetical statement here, he's saying the essence of a fallen world is that the best cannot be attained by free enjoyment, but by denial, by suffering. That's what he's saying. Faithfulness in Christian marriage entails that great mortification. For a Christian man, there is no escape. Marriage may help to sanctify and direct to its proper object his sexual desires. Its grace may help him in the struggle, but the struggle remains. It will not satisfy him, as hunger may be kept off by regular meals. It will offer as many difficulties to the purity proper to that state as it provides easements. No man, however truly he loved his betrothed and bride as a young man, has lived faithful to her as a wife in mind and body, without deliberate, conscious exercise of the will, without self-denial. Too few are told that, even those brought up in the church. Those outside seem seldom to have heard it. When the glamour wears off, or merely works a bit thin, they think they have made a mistake, and that the real soulmate is still to find. The real soulmate too often proves to be the next sexually attractive person that comes along. Someone whom they might indeed very profitably have married, if only, fill in the blank. Hence divorce to provide the if only. And of course, they are, as a rule, quite right. They did make a mistake. Only a very wise man at the end of his life could make a sound judgment concerning whom among the total possible chances he ought most profitably to have married. Nearly all marriages, even happy ones, are mistakes, in the sense that almost certainly in a more perfect world, or even with a little more care in this very imperfect one, both partners might have found more suitable mates. But the real soulmate is the one you are actually married to. You really do very little choosing. Life and circumstance do most of it, though if there is a God, these must be his instruments or his appearances. It is notorious that in fact happy marriages are more common where the choosing by the young persons is even more limited by parental or family authority, as long as there is a social ethic of plain unromantic responsibility and conjugal fidelity. But even in countries where the romantic tradition has so far affected social arrangements as to make people believe that the choosing of a mate is solely the concern of the young, only the rarest good fortune brings together the man and woman who are really, as it were, destined for one another, and capable of a very great and splendid love. The idea still dazzles us, catches us by the throat. Poems and stories in multitudes have been written on the theme, more probably than the total of such loves in real life. Yet the greatest of these tales do not tell of the happy marriage of such great lovers, but of their tragic separation, as if even in this sphere the truly great and splendid in this fallen world is more nearly achieved by failure and suffering. In such great inevitable love, often love at first sight, we catch a vision, I suppose, of marriage as it should have been in an unfallen world. In this fallen world, we have as our only guides prudence, wisdom, rare in youth, too late in age, a clean heart, and fidelity of will.
Yeah, you can play the what if game all you want, and in the end, it'll just emphasize your unhappiness with your situation.
You are who you bring it to the marriage.
Well, I'm just saying, what I'm saying is dwelling on the what if I'd been with this other person.
Right.
The only way you can do that is if you have access to a time machine, so you go back to the end of your life and look at all the lists.
In other words, it's not very helpful, is it?
Yeah.
Any other comments?
It's not productive.
The only thing that's helpful, the only thing that's effective here is to do with
What you have.
what we have.
Sounds like a very Tolkien-esque quote there. The one where he's in Moria, right? The one you mentioned earlier.
That's right.
All we can do is we write something about the time that we're given is to
Do the best we can.
do the best we can. Talk's been quite quiet.
Well, I've been trying to get some of our female listeners to speak up, but one apparently lost their connection to YouTube, and the others, I guess there's some Hall of Fire thing that started it too for the One Ring. So we don't seem to have any female listeners at the moment, unfortunately. Or if they are, they're
Hall of Fire?
silent. It's somebody else's podcast. And I don't know anything about it. I see them talk about it. I don't know anything about it.
I think when he says the real soulmate is the one you're actually married to is a really good comment, because my wife and I have been married for 19 years, and we put up with each other, and a lot of challenges, but it's very, very true. I think that rather than me thinking, well, maybe there was somebody, more this, more that, oh no, I've missed the one that I should have, you know what I mean? I think that's just an easy kind of out.
Well, that's kind of a product of the attitude that, when you get married, and if you're truly with your soulmate, it'll magically come together, but it actually takes work.
Yeah.
Lots of work.
That's a quote.
Right. How long are you and your wife been married?
6 years. It wasn't so bad for the first 5.
Where did we finish?
But when you have
5 children suddenly interrupt your marriage, as we have 5 foster kids, your marriage is tested. It
Yes.
is
Yes,
painful.
indeed.
Suffering.
Suffering.
Yes.
Suffering is very, very prominent here.
Yeah, Bill Cosby. Bill Cosby said he truly paid for those seconds of pleasure that he got from his wife.
Yes. But
I think, wouldn't you agree, Chris?
I would
that
agree that it is
it's worth it.
still, I mean, I took her out on her half birthday and went ice skating last night. Yeah, we still do.
I think I've been, like my wife and I have been reading the book by Tim Keller, The Meaning of Marriage, and in a nutshell, he says, rather than looking for greener pastures,
Water your lawn.
yeah, and I think it's saying, it's just saying that if both people are willing to accept the fact that the other person is not a perfect mate, and they have forgiveness and they're willing to work on that marriage, and I think it's just a lot of work, like you said, but I think it's in some ways his point is that the commitment allows the freedom to trust to grow. So, which is, anyway, going back to the Lord of the Rings, any comments on how this connects to Tolkien's view of romance in there, or shall we move on?
Why don't we get through more of this? We're running out of time, and hopefully some listeners may have tuned back in here, and we can get more feedback.
Well, we're almost done here. He's just going to refer to Edith and him, right?
Yes. Now he's going to talk about his wife and such, and now he
Carry
came
on.
back and fell in love with her.
My own
Okay.
history.
My own history is so exceptional, so wrong and imprudent in nearly every point, that it makes it difficult to counsel prudence. Yet hard cases make bad law, and exceptional cases are not always good guides for others. For what it is worth, here is some autobiography, mainly on this occasion directed towards the points of age and finance. I fell in love with your mother at approximate age of 18, quite genuinely, as has been shown, though of course defects of character and temperament have caused me often to fall below the ideal with which I started. Your mother was older than I, and not a Catholic. Altogether unfortunate as viewed by a guardian, as a footnote for that. And it was, in a sense, very fortunate, and in a way very bad for me. These things are absorbing and nervously exhausting. I was a clever boy in the throes of work for a very necessary Oxford scholarship. The combined tensions nearly produced a bad breakdown. I've had many. I muffed my exams, and though, as years afterwards my headmaster told me, I ought to have got a good scholarship, I only landed by the skin of my teeth an exhibition of 60 pounds at Exeter, just enough with a school leaving scholarship of the same amount to come up on, assisted by my dear old guardian. He's referring to Father.
Parents?
No, his father. He
the
and
Catholic priest.
he and Hillary were raised. First his
right.
father died, then his mother died, and so he was raised by a priest. Of course, there was a credit side, not so easily seen by the guardian. I was clever, but not industrious or single-minded. A large part of my failure was due simply to not working, or at least not at classics, not because I was in love, but because I was studying something else, Gothic and whatnot. He's always felt guilty. He always feels guilty about following his passion there. Having the romantic upbringing, I made a boy and girl affair serious, and made it the source of effort. Naturally, rather a physical coward, I passed from a despised rabbit on a house second team to school colors in 2 seasons. All that sort of thing. However, trouble arose, and I had to choose between disobeying and grieving or deceiving a guardian who had been a father to me, more than most real fathers, but without any obligation, and dropping the love affair until I was 21. They gave him an edict. They said, you cannot see her anymore until you come of age. And
Which at that age was 21.
yeah, and so he did. He cut off, but it was...
Kind of still is, isn't it?
Well, it varies. But I don't regret my decision, though it was very hard.
Yeah.
It was very hard on my lover. And I don't think he means that in the physical sense that now means.
No,
Yeah.
just his beloved.
Exactly, yeah. But that was not my fault. She was perfectly free and under no vow to me, and I should have had no just complaint, except according to the unreal romantic code, if she had got married to someone else. For very nearly 3 years, I did not see or write to my lover. It was extremely hard, painful and bitter, especially at first. The effects were not wholly good. I fell back into folly and slackness and misspent a great deal of my year at college. But I don't think anything else would have justified marriage on the basis of a boy's affair. And probably nothing else would have hardened the will enough to give such an affair, however genuine a case of true love, permanence. On the night of my 21st birthday, I wrote again to your mother, January 3rd, 1913. On January 8th, I went back to her and became engaged and informed an astonished family. I picked up my socks and did a spot of work, too late to save honorable mods from disaster. There's a footnote for that. I don't know what that means.
Sounds like it needs translation.
Yeah. And then war broke out the next year, while I still had a year to go at college. In those days, chaps joined up or were scorned publicly. It was a nasty cleft to be in, especially for a young man with too much imagination and little physical courage. No degree, no money, fiancé. I endured the obloquy, and hence becoming outspoken from relatives, stayed up and produced a first in finals in 1915. Bolted into the Army July 1915. I found the situation intolerable and married on March 22nd, 1916. May found me crossing the Channel. I still have the verse I wrote on the occasion, for the carnage of the song.
Keep reading. Why don't you just finish it?
Yeah. Think of your mother. Yet I do not now for a moment feel that she was doing more than she should have been asked to do. Not that that detracted from the credit of it. I was a young fellow with a moderate degree and apt to write verse, a few dwindling pounds per annum of 20 to 40 pounds, and no prospects. A second lieutenant on 7/6 a day.
7 shillings 6 pence
a day in the infantry, where the chances of survival were against you heavily as a subaltern. She married me in 1916, and John was born in 1917. Conceived and carried during the starvation year of 1917 and the great U-boat campaign, round about the Battle of Cambrai, when the end of the war seemed as far off as it does now. I sold out, spent to pay the nursing home, the last of my few South African shares, my patrimony. Out of the darkness of my life, so much frustrated, I put before you the one great thing to love on earth, the Blessed Sacrament. There you will find romance, glory, honor, fidelity, and the true way of all your loves upon earth, and more than that, death, by the divine paradox, that which ends life and demands the surrender of all, and yet by the taste or foretaste of which alone can you seek in your earthly relationships love, faithfulness, joy, be maintained, or take on that complexion of reality, of external endurance, which eternal endurance, which every man's heart desires. And it's finally the end of the letter.
Thank you, Hawk.
That is a long letter.
Yeah, that was a mouthful. So in one sentence, how would you summarize this last part? Let's each take a turn. It's the teacher and me coming out.
How dare you?
Chris?
Well, he did the honorable thing. But there's no glory in doing honorable things.
Referring to him waiting 3 years.
Yes.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he points out how that help may have reinforced his relationship with her, as opposed to it being an easily achieved goal.
Absolutely.
And thus of less value. It may
Just
increase the value to it.
Yeah, we value things we struggle for.
Yeah, that's right. We agree. Okay. Yeah, is that what you're...
We value the things we struggle for.
So
I'll take the easy way.
One sentence. Okay, all I would add is he was facing amazing obstacles and yet showed a determination to hold on and love Edith, and so I think he practiced what he preached.
Yeah, another note of interest is he was on the battlefield in World War II in the butchery that went on.
World War One?
Yeah, World War One. He was in the center of that.
Oh yeah. I mean, some of this is pretty hardcore, isn't it?
14-year-old boys going to war. and he wasn't going to war.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
why
he was getting a lot of
a
support.
lot of
But it's good that he finished that degree.
yes.
That's despite the social stigma he was getting.
Well, that made him an
That was
officer.
big, that was significant. Right, it made a difference as an officer. He had something to come back to.
Yeah.
Even though it was limited, it was far better than if he hadn't finished.
Absolutely.
That was a hard decision under a lot of social pressure from family and friends, clearly. And that certainly showed some real inner resolve to ignore the social pressure and do what he knew he needed to get done.
Yeah, at the start they had that whole white feather thing.
Oh yeah,
Started
oh,
the
yeah,
war before they realized how bloody and awful it was.
Yeah. And it's interesting because he I get distracted when I'm listening to audio. There's a delay of like 7 seconds, so I get distracted on my train of thought there. But he ignored the social stigma, focused on what he needed to do, set a foundation that he could build on, was aware of the stigma. It wasn't that he was, some people were just heads down and not aware. What was also interesting is he talks about how before that, he kind of slacked off and was always distracted. But when the pressure was on, he focused and he aced it. So he shows to himself and to others that if he did buckle down, he could focus.
And that it's not specifically written, but I think he thinks that it's his wife's credit for it.
Right.
Yeah.
Another thing about the Battle of the Sun is History Channel was saying how he went to war with 3 of his best friends and only 1 made it out.
Yeah.
Did you see that? There was a History Channel.
I think I saw an advertisement in a little blurb.
We talked about that at the beginning of the letters, didn't we?
Yeah, because early on he talked about losing all his friends. Yeah, that was earlier this year.
Life-changing experience.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think you can understand
It shaped
Tolkien
him.
quite without knowing something about World War I.
Well, that's why it's a whole
World War
book
I
on
has
Tolkien and the Great War.
World War I has been characterized as the first industrialized war.
Right.
Artemir's asking, I asked people to ask for any last-minute comments, and this is unrelated to what we were discussing.
Okay, sure.
Artemir asks, one thing he's wondering, what actually happened to Murph.com? Why did it go down and then came up again? I took all the websites down after the election. Everything. So I'm not going to go into more than that.
Okay.
And many are still offline, and I'm debating whether it's even worth bothering. So that's why.
Yes, I can understand that.
Requires a lot of effort, I assume.
Well,
It takes a lot of personal money, time, effort to run these 30-something sites. And, I'm not sure people appreciate, my funds came from capitalistic endeavors. The reason why I'm able to do this and offer this for people. And so it was my own little protest of people's decisions. So.
I think it's appropriate here to just thank you, Hawk, for pouring energy and time and money into trying to, in a sense, not just spend it on yourself, but looking for ways to, if I can use the word, invest your capital in worthwhile projects. And I guess that kind of, if I can make a little link up with what Tolkien was getting at, relationships. I think that I would just kind of summarize it in one word. I think Tolkien was referring to relationships, and this is also, these letters were in the context of a relationship with the father and the son. And anytime you have a relationship, including the Inklings, there's give, there's take. You don't exist kind of as lone rangers. And hopefully, I think good relationships, you end up having more than the sum of the parts. Just like today, we have together more than we would have alone. We have shared, thinking, shared experiences. I think that's why stories are so powerful. And I think right now, good and true or honorable or transcendent stories will become more and more important. I think as people face the grim realities that are out there. Story is a very important place to go, much like I suppose Hawk, you would say role-playing can be. A way of working through things or whatever.
Powerful tool. Yeah.
Powerful tool.
Actually, I have a thought that kind of relates, but it's slightly off. I've heard it characterized on the History Channel as feeling machines that think. And I think that if we embrace the emotion as a human being, then we're diminishing our potential, and we're coming closer to an animal than actually a human being. I think that being able to think is one of the things that separates us from the animal kingdom, and to reject that is shameful.
Can I piggyback on that?
Go ahead.
I would just briefly add to that I think even more than thinking, I think thinking is a huge part, but I think what makes us even more different than the animals than thinking is loving. I think love, which wants the good of the other, is unique. I would say there is some truth to that. If you take off all the baggage of the Middle Ages, I think, weren't they seeking
For the part coming out of the lake.
well,
The watery talk.
the watery part.
Actually, one thing to keep in mind about the Middle Ages is that they took up adult responsibilities young and they died young. So they were a society of children.
Yeah.
To our standards.
Yeah, you have people marrying at 14 years old.
Right.
The norm, yeah.
Well,
we
thank
should
all
wrap
of you
up.
for being with us, those of you who listened in to AYA Tolkien Society. Make sure to tune in next month. It should be really fun, exciting.
Second weekend in December.
Right. So that's going to actually be December 15th. Or 8th.
December 8th.
December 8th, because actually Saturday falls on the 1st, so it's a tricky one. So December 8th will be our next meeting.
12:30 Pacific time.
12:30 Pacific time, and we're going to discuss.
We're going to discuss The Hobbit as the
Just before
novel
as the movies are coming out.
and the first film, which is going to be coming out the following week.
And should we try to do an extra meeting afterwards, or should we just wait till January maybe?
I thought
Yeah,
3
holidays.
weeks of rumination.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, so January we can then discuss post movies.
Bookend it.
Now, I have to admit, I probably won't get to see the movie because
Unless
of my
somebody
boycott
pays
of the
for it,
MPAA.
that
No,
way you don't have to.
No, I can't.
Huck
It's
will
still them
stick with
getting the money
guns.
because of me. It's puts me in a real moral dilemma. But I've been boycotting the MPAA since '02, and so I have to wait until it comes out used on DVD or Blu-ray, whatever it's used.
Well,
I'll
we
be
could get a
behind the
script of
curve.
it. The script would be
Yeah, no, I mean,
capitulating.
there's certainly ways of doing analysis. So I'll be relying on everybody else's
Right.
commentary on that. Will be interesting. I'll have a very delayed viewpoint. Well, thank you everybody who did tune in, and appreciate those who could comment. Ardemir, no worries that you didn't have a chance to pre-read it. It was a long letter. I certainly didn't pre-read it. And again, we appreciate the feedback. And this broadcast, for those who missed it, you can let others know, will be available on the YouTube website almost immediately under youtube.com/TolkienMoot. And then, of course, edited versions come up later as I get them up there. And still clearly trying to fix the audio. There's less background noise, but we're still having trouble with the volume. When I get it to enough volume, it starts to distort. It's, once again, Google Plus screwing things up. It doesn't want to do what I'm telling it to do. But I'll keep fiddling with it. At least it's isolating the conversation better. We're not getting, though it doesn't isolate the loud noises, it isolates the background conversation a lot better.
Right.
So at least hear each individual person better. So all of you, thank you. Oh, yes.
Before we say Marie,
Yes.
So the next letters, we're reading up to letter 47.
I'm going to read up to letter 47. Okay.
Anything else?
Letter 47.
That's it.
All right. Well, thank you, wherever it may be. Be well. Namaria.
Namaria.